We just started a fire with some waterproof fire starters. Welcome to Hack a Week. So both of my parents were makers, doers, and they were pretty self-sufficient. That's just how they grew up. My dad was born in 1914, my mom in 1919, and they both grew up on farms, and they just learned as they grew up that that's just what you did. You made things, you fixed things, you didn't throw them away and go buy something else. You didn't have that option. So they were pretty innovative, and I learned a lot of things from them. One particular fall before deer hunting season, my dad was in the kitchen one day, busy as I came home from school, doing this thing with wax. He was melting some wax, and he had some newspaper there and some matches. I was like, "Hey, Dad, what are you doing?" And like he always did when he was doing things, and he would teach me, not so much with words, he just said, "Just watch, son, and you'll see." And so I patiently watched him make these things. And they're waterproof fire starters. They're really cool, but it's just basically some newspaper soaked in wax with some strike anywhere matches in the middle, all rolled up, and you can just stuff them in your pocket. And if you're stuck in the woods somewhere, you need to start a fire, these will get a fire started even in the rain. Let me show you how they're made. Here's what you need. You need some wax, paraffin wax. And you can usually find this at a supermarket or a hardware store that might carry canning goods. My mom used to melt this stuff and use it when she would make jams and jellies to seal the jam or jelly in the jar to keep it from fermenting or decomposing or, turning into wine, basically. And it's commonly used in canning for that very thing. It says right here, for canning, candle making, and many other uses. Paraffin's pretty cool stuff that comes from petrochemicals, oil, and it has a melting point that starts at about 99 degrees Fahrenheit. It boils at 690 some degrees, and it will catch on fire, so you need to be careful when you heat it up. So what you'll need is some paraffin wax, some strike anywhere matches. Really important that you use the strike anywhere type, not the kind that light only on the side of the box. They have to be strike anywhere. Some newspaper. Need some aluminum foil to lay out the wax soaked newspaper. We'll get to that in a minute. Some scissors to cut the newspaper. You need something to melt the wax in, and you want to be real careful because if you tip it over, the wax can catch on fire, and it's really tough to put out once it starts to burn. If you get it on your skin and it's on fire, or even if it's melted, it will burn you. So be really careful if you make these. Do so at your own risk and all that blah blah stuff. Anyway, let's get started with it. Okay, first thing, we will cut up some newspaper. I want to cut this about in half. So each sheet, we'll take that sheet, cut it up the middle, and then we'll just cut this right up the middle. Just like that. So we'll make a few of those. We'll put those aside. Next up, we need to get some wax melted. So let's open up our box here and throw in a couple chunks. We'll get the burner going. I've got a fire extinguisher nearby. Now let's see, these are strike anywhere, so I can just strike them on the floor of the shop and they'll light. In fact, you should be able to strike these on a pair of jeans and light them. Look at that. Strike anywhere. Gotta have strike anywhere matches. So let's get the wax melting now. You want to melt it just to the point where it just turns liquid, and then just let it sit there. Turn the burner off. If it starts to smoke, just like oil in a pan when you're frying something, that's too hot. You don't want it to do that. That's really hot, in fact, if it starts to do that. So we'll let that melt, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, we are done. See that little bit of smoke? That's it. I want to stop right there. That's really hot. Okay, now what we're going to do is take a piece of this newspaper. We're just going to dip it in the wax carefully. Gotta watch the fingers. Stuff is hot. It'll burn. I don't know what the temperature of that is right now, but I can tell you it's pretty darn toasty. Alright. So now we've got a piece of newspaper nicely coated. We're just going to lay that out here on the aluminum foil. The reason I'm using the aluminum foil is I can peel it off from that later. Now the next thing is to take a nice little handful of matches and get all of the ends with the striker on them pointing in the same direction. Just do like maybe a couple dozen. Just, you know, about this many. Now we're going to take those and coat the ends in wax. Just that quick. And we'll flip them over, get the other end coated. Now what we're going to do is put them here on the newspaper. And we'll take the sides of this, get it loosened up from the aluminum foil next. So put them in here, fold the end of the newspaper over a little bit so it covers the ends of the matches, like so. Fold this end over. And now what you're after is to just roll this whole thing up into a nice, really tight bundle. Now what this will do is two things. It will make the matches waterproof, and you can carry them in your pocket or anywhere, and they can get soaked with water and they won't penetrate into where the matches are. You'll always have dry matches, and all of that newspaper with the wax on it makes for a great tinder to start a fire, even if it's wet. So now that we've got it all rolled up like that, we're going to dip it back into the wax. I'm going to take it off the burner and tip it a little bit sideways so I get some deeper wax here. And I'm going to put it in there, let it swish around for a minute and get the air out. And then we'll let that just cool off for a couple minutes. And we'll go ahead and dip the other end in. Let that cool off. We'll just put it right back on the aluminum foil and let it cool. While that's cooling, we can go ahead and do the next one. And that's 4 that I've made now. Let's go back to the first one, and now what we do is double dip them. You don't want to do it too long because it will melt the wax that was previously put on. So this is kind of like candle making at this point now. You just dip it in there, let it cool off. And we're going to do this, so I don't know, 4 or 5 times so you get a really nice coat of wax all over the whole thing. If you really want to seal these up, you can take a little tin can and pinch the end so you can pour it a little easier. Dip a little bit of wax out and just pour some right into the end of each one. That'll really, really, really seal them up and keep them a little more durable. You can let those cool off, flip them over, do the same thing to the other side, and they're ready to go. Pack them up in your backpack, put them in your jacket, whatever. If you're going out hiking or on some trip in the woods where you might be stranded and you need to start a fire, you've got something that is reliable that'll do just that. Whew, it's a pretty cold, windy day here. We got snow the last couple days from that storm, and we're going to test these out, see if we can get a fire started here. I've gathered up some pine needles, or as we call them around here, pine straw. And I've got a little bit of wood shavings here from our wood pile. So I'm cheating a little bit. If you were in the wild, you'd be pretty hard pressed to find some really good dry wood, but sometimes if you dig around underneath the understory a little, if it's wet or if there's snow and you dig down, you might find something that's not quite as saturated. The nice thing about this wax is it'll burn quite a while, and we've got plenty of matches to keep going. By the time I unroll this, I'll have quite a bit of tinder to work with here. I'm gonna get this dog out of the way so she doesn't turn into a hot dog. Watch out, Sophie. So let's tear one of these open first. They're really sealed up well, so I'm gonna have to work at it. Well, this won't burn up really quick like a piece of newspaper, because what's going to happen is the wax will start to melt, the vapor will rise up, and it's the vapor that burns, kind of like in a candle. Okay, we got a little bit there. Go ahead and put a little bit of pine needles on top of this, just for starter. And let's get a match out here. See if we can do the old fingernail strike. Almost. One match against the other, maybe. There we go. Get another one going. And once this wax starts to burn, it should go for quite a while. Just off the wax fuel. So let's get some of this on here, and it'll help dry it out too as it goes. Pine needles are a really good tinder because once they do catch and go, they burn pretty hot. Start getting some of my smaller pieces of wood on here. Got a pretty good wind blowing. That can help, but it can also blow it out if it blows too much. See if I can poke a piece underneath here to get my wax paper elevated a little bit more. It's trying, but it needs a little more draft. Still got some good wax tinder over here. I'm going to get that going. And this wood's pretty wet, so it's not going to start right up. It's going to take a bit of work. Well, that's not too bad. It's trying to start. At least I've got a little bit of warmth. If I keep working at this, I know I could get a good fire going. And if it was an emergency situation and I'm out in the wild, you bet your ass I'd be looking around for some good tinder and work hard at getting this fire stoked. Right now I'm getting smoked out. But anyway, there you go. It's a simple way to make some fire starters to take with you on a hike, or if you're a hunter, to take with you when you go hunting. Just a good emergency starter. They're really handy. Well, anyway, till next time. Woohoo!
Electric. Electric.
Where's the hot dogs? Ah.